Hey, everybody, welcome to Fictionology. This is Gideon,
And this is Bardikins.
and we're coming to you live from the COVID bunker, waiting patiently for our vaccines and for reality and normalcy to resume.
And
Uh,
goodness, I can't wait.
I know we've all been very patient. Nobody has lost their minds yet, at least on this channel, and
Yet.
it's just around the corner. I think the most recent news was sufficient vaccinations by the end of May, so it's ahead of schedule, and it can't come soon enough.
Whew, tell me
Uh,
about it.
but in the meantime, we're back with specifically our second um, kind of. We haven't even come up really with a title for these, as far as I know, but like our standard, I want to say generic, but our non-topical
Right.
episodes. We wanted
What
to
we're.
do these. I'm
Mhm.
sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say what we're doing, what's going on, what
Right.
fiction's
Yeah.
going on.
Kind of like a recap of the week or the month or however long in between episodes. And life has definitely hit, so they have not been as regular as we intended, and as they shall be. But I'm basically spending half my time at the vet, so it's definitely cut into some time here. But the good news is we're here to do it now. We're here to catch up with all of you on the things that we've been doing, the things we've been reading, the things we've been watching, playing in the world of fiction. And
Yeah.
I don't know which one of us wants to go first, but here. I'll just throw one out there. Even though it is March and it was February, I've been wearing the hell out of that 1992 Bram Stoker's Dracula. Like I've watched that thing like 6 times
Yeah, I
in the
saw you.
last. Yeah, I don't
It's
know,
kind of
man.
creepy, to be honest with you.
It is. It is creepy. It is. It's a genuinely unsettling movie, and I think some of the one of the reasons that I watch it so persistently is like it's a fear that I'm trying to overcome, kind of like my fear of shipwrecks, which is topic for another time with a therapist.
It's okay. We got you through that one Titanic
That's right.
documentary, so
You're
it's
supposed
okay.
to be like, it can't hurt you, buddy. It's not here. The Titanic can't hurt you.
Mhm.
Um, this movie, um, made in 1992 by Francis Ford Coppola, director of The Godfather. I mean, just a legendary director. Big influence on George Lucas, actually, as a matter of fact. Um, this movie was made in 1992. Stars Gary Oldman, Anthony Hopkins, Winona Ryder, Keanu Reeves, of all people, pre John Wick fame, pre Matrix fame. And he's about as big of a, or as about of appropriate of a fit as you could possibly guess. He's Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures, The Matrix, John Wick, and he's in a friggin' Dracula movie. He fits about as well as you would expect. But that movie just traumatized me when I was a kid. That was the creepiest, most unsettling movie I'd ever seen in my life. And I love horror movies.
Mhm. You know,
Um, Go ahead.
I just say honestly, I never watched it until I was an adult. So I never even heard of it until I was an adult. So
Yeah, it's kind of. I mean, it's definitely more of a cult classic than like than a pop culture icon like The Godfather and Godfather Part Two are, but or Apocalypse Now. I think that was Francis Ford Coppola. I think that was also. Yeah. Anyway, it was never, it never took the cinema by force, but it is a cult classic. It's highly reviewed, and it is a damn good movie in terms of the performances, the cinematography, the costume design. Now, the title, again, Bram Stoker's Dracula, is a bit of a misnomer because it is not faithful to the book. I mean, some things are, but it is not by any respect the most faithful adaptation of Stoker's novel. Um, but yeah, I've been wearing that out, which is unusual. I mean, like I don't I can rewatch movies, but like I've been watching that one like even when I'm like at work having it on in the background, just like back to back to back. It's very
that is
strange.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's not normal. I don't think. I mean, unless you're like dissecting something, it just
I guess I'm absorbing it in a way. So and I've mentioned this before, maybe even on another fictionology episode, but it has the best, most memorable, creepiest interpretation of vampiric lore that I've
hmm
seen in cinema. Vampires are obviously. I mean, they're easily the most popular supernatural creature in terms of, pop culture. I mean,
Right.
there are more fiction dedicated to vampires than zombies and werewolves probably combined and stuff like that. So they're definitely the most iconic and popular horror creature. Um, and I think since like since the mid '90s, really since Blade, that the Blade adaptation with Wesley Snipes came out,
Yeah.
the trend to me has seemed to make vampires more of a science fiction creature than like a gothic horror fiction creature. So like in Blade, the vampires are the product of like a retrovirus, and they try to contextualize it in a pseudo biological interpretation, and they did it again with Underworld, with Kate Beckinsale and all that stuff. So it's like the trend seems to be to make them, some sort of contagion, right?
Yeah, I've seen that a
And
lot. Yeah.
yeah, again, I think that's kind of the trend, which I get it. We try to, like, fiction tends to be, I think, more grounded in a lot of ways than it's ever been. More thought is put into the world building. So when you're dealing with something like vampires and the setting takes place in the quote unquote real world, you try to contextualize it accordingly and say, oh, it's a virus, it's a
Right.
retrovirus, it's a plague, it's something. Um, but in Stoker's book, vampires were very eldritch. They were very unholy, very demonic. It wasn't just the super strength and super speed, which are standard tropes of vampiric lore. They were really weird, and like they were repelled by the cross and garlic, and they couldn't cross running water, and they could only cross oceans, or they could only cross running water at the ebb, like the slack and the ebb of the tide or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like just these weird random things. They had to sleep. The reason they had to sleep in the coffin and Stover's not Stovers,
Soaker?
Strokers,
Oh.
Stokers. I'm having a stroker myself. And I'm getting my Star Wars author confused with Bram
And
Stoker's
you're
like
cooking
Stoker.
it's like the
Yeah.
frozen food, the Stofers or whatever.
Yes. So Stouffer's frozen vampire. Mm. Oh, frozen steak. That would have been the better pun. Anyway, whatever. So Stoker's vampires had to sleep in their coffins because the coffins were filled with earth or soil from their native homeland, and they needed to do that to recharge their power. So I mean, it's stuff that you really couldn't explain with like biological tropes. And this film, the one thing it does do is it really depicts the unholy, weird demon stuff, I think, a lot better than any other vampire film I've seen. And you've seen some of the stuff at like my request, like how his shadow moves independently of him and how he moves like herky jerky at
Yeah,
times,
right.
and like I remember one deleted scene's really good. It's when Keanu Reeves, Jonathan Harker, is being led into Castle Dracula at the beginning of the film, just like in the book. And Dracula's giving him basically a tour. And in this deleted scene, Dracula's in front of him, with that 7-mile long robe that you and I were laughing about, that if he tripped over and fell, it would take him 3 years to get out of.
Yeah.
In this deleted scene, he's beside and kind of in front of Harker, holding a lantern, leading him deeper into the castle. And they're having a dialogue scene as they're walking up steps. And then Dracula kind of rounds the corner like of the staircase, and then he shows up at the foot of the staircase behind Harker, and walks right up past Harker again. And Harker's like, "What the hell?" And Dracula never says anything, but like the laws of physics and just the kind of strange quirks about the place, which are in the book,
Sure.
like stuff
Like the
like that's in the
mysticism,
books,
right? Yeah.
right? And in the story, you know, it's written. It's an epistolary book, so it's written in the form of letters, and Harker is the first narrator in the story. And of course, he doesn't know at first that what Dracula is. He just the word is eccentric. He thought he's heard that Dracula is an eccentric count, and boy is he. I mean, it's understatement, right? And so it's written in a way that Harker is supposed to be, increasingly unnerved and unsettled, and he doesn't know what the hell is going on, and he's really weirded out. This movie does a great job of depicting that eeriness, that sense of discomfort. Like, what was that? And I'm like, that's not right. That's strange. And I found that is as or more effective as a horror element than just a jump scare.
Sure.
So it's just it's really good. I don't know, for some reason, like, I've just been really fixated on it lately.
Either that or you're a vampire and I don't know it. So
Well,
maybe you're learning your craft.
yes. I don't know what that accent was. Like,
Well, your sleep schedule's certainly
yeah.
been messed up. So
Yes, it's because I'm not sleeping in a coffin of my
That's
native
true.
soil. And as we talked about too, the interesting thing about that is what happens if the maps are redrawn?
Yeah, and it's no longer your native soil.
Like, could you totally screw a vampire that way? I mean, screw him over. Like, hey, you know what? I'm not going to kill you. I'm just going to, ascend to the highest levels of public office, and I'm going to redraw the borders.
Yeah, that's when you start getting too in depth, looking too deeply.
I'm just saying,
at
if
some
there
of
were
that.
any vampires during, Stalin's reign of the USSR, that would have been a bad day for a vampire. You know what I mean? Like, didn't he
Yeah, for sure.
radically rewrite borders?
Oh yeah.
See?
Well, I mean, in nation states, names have changed and have, past 500-600 years have really changed a lot, right? So
That's right. Stoker didn't take any of this into account, man. It would
No,
be
he
tough
didn't.
to be a vampire. But yet, no, I did. That's the thing, though. That's one thing, like you said, about the book, and one aspect of this film I really like. I mean, they've got all these crazy powers. I mean, Dracula is super strong in this movie, and he's super fast. He can, shapeshift. He can become this like kind of werewolf monstrosity, this bat monstrosity. He can command wolves and rats and lesser creatures. He can control the weather. Like, he's induced storms and heavy
Right.
rain and stuff like that. He can take the form of mist. So he's got this like tremendous laundry list of powers where you're thinking, holy crap, how can you beat this guy? But then he fears the cross. He can't come into the house uninvited. Garlic repels him. He can operate during the
Right.
day, but he can't shapeshift. He's got to get back into his or into his coffin to recharge his powers.
Because he's an alkaline battery, right?
Right, exactly. He is. He's a vampiric alkaline battery. And again, so I mean, just like it makes sense that, okay, a small group of educated, savvy people could conceivably take him down under the right circumstances. Like, he's not a god, but he is unholy and weird and demonic, and it's really, really, really creepy. And Gary Oldman just does an incredible job. So that's really been my fiction obsessive point here lately. So.
Yeah, I can tell. There you go, everyone. There you go. Bram Stoker's lasagna. Go watch
Stouffer's Vamp Zanya. Oh,
Go watch it. Absorb it.
Yes, but make sure that you you take the plastic off it a little bit to vent, and then you put it back in for 3 minutes. Make sure you stir accordingly.
Well, I think those you just throw in the oven. But yeah, the big family ones.
TV dinner.
Well, the big family ones that you can buy.
Oh yeah,
it's like
does Stouffer not do TV dinners?
They might. I don't know.
Well, now you got me. Now you got me all cattywampus. Now I don't even know if my puns or my references even applied. Great, thank you.
Well, you can Google it later. It's okay.
I will. So I did one. What's new in your world in terms of fiction?
Well, not as in-depth or obsessive as that. I can tell you that. So I just want to say that the first thing I'm going to talk about here is Morrowind. So I've been continuing to stream Morrowind. Everybody should join us. Right now, I have a schedule running that I will stream every Wednesday from 8 to 10:30ish Eastern time on our Twitch channel. That's twitch.tv/fictionology.
That's twitch.tv/fictionology.
Please come on and join us. We have some fun. We talk in the chat and everything. I'll engage with you guys. And we're going through Morrowind. And we just finished up the Fighters Guild of Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. and we're working on the Redoran quest line, and we're just going to keep going, and it's going to take many hours to complete. We've spent well over 10 to 12 hours on just one guild, and we haven't even touched the main quests or anything.
Well,
We're
how
running
many of those are actually successfully recorded?
well, so far all of them except for one, which is
Believe it.
lost to history.
Believe
So
it,
if you're looking on the YouTube and you see Morrowind Part 1, it'll jump straight to Part 3. We lost Episode 2 with some technical difficulties, but everything else is on there. And I'm having a really good time playing through Morrowind. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and I think it still holds up today. It looks nice, surprisingly, on the PC.
Yes, I thought so as well. As someone who hasn't played it since the OG Xbox days, I was
it
very
it
impressed.
really brings back a lot of the RPG elements that are sometimes a little bit lost. For example, quests. Going to find quests are often very easy in Morrowind. They'll even mark them on your map sometimes. But on other quests, they'll say turn left, turn right at the first hill, should be over there somewhere. And so in a lot of these episodes, you'll see that I get lost. I straight up get lost for like 10, 15, 20 minutes because
Isn't
I'm
that because
following their directions.
isn't that because you're incredibly drunk at the time? Let's just be honest here.
Well, I mean, yes, and I'm drunk. I'm dealing with chat because our boy Kirkus is there, one of our friends. He's always there sending messages to me and laughing
Oh,
at me.
no wonder.
So I appreciate that. But we always, we get into good fights with some good enemies. We're the Grandmasters of the Fighters Guild now. Kind of cheesy. They wanted us to do a bunch of extra stuff, so we just killed the guy instead. So I encourage you guys to catch up on it and join us from 8 to 10 Eastern on Wednesdays for now.
At twitch.tv/fictionology.
Yeah, and join us for some good Morrowind fun because I know it's clunky for a lot of people to try to play, but I'm very willing to play it because it's not too clunky for me, and it's one of my favorite games of all time. So I have no issues playing that at all.
There's definitely the nostalgia factor. I mean,
Oh,
you've
100%.
logged more hours into that game, right, than any single player game ever, right?
I would say Crusader Kings has probably taken that crown totally
Oh, touche.
because I probably got over
Good pun, by the way.
combined of I didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
I've probably got over like 2,000 or 3,000 combined hours in Crusader Kings. So that one probably has taken the crown now. But yes, Morrowind back in the day, man, I spent so much time playing through Morrowind and trying to find all of the legendary items and completing everything, all the quests. And it's still my favorite Elder Scrolls game to this day. And I talked about that on the I think the Island video, a lot of the merits and stuff. But like just all of the RPG or RP elements that were still in the game at the time that kind of got watered down later. Um, just not being able to teleport everywhere. There's plenty of fast travel in the game. Boats, silt striders, which are the giant fleas, mage guild teleports. There's plenty of fast travel, but you can't just click on the map and fast travel, right? It's in game fast travel. Like you have to, it's actually part of the infrastructure of the world, right?
It's built
So,
into the game as opposed to just, hey, let's fire up this map and break the
and click a
conceit of the
button.
game. Yeah.
Right. And instead of doing that, it's built as part of. It's like taking the subway in the game, basically. Yeah, you're just it's public transportation or private if you're doing the Mage Guild and stuff. But there's plenty of it, and it still does, but it doesn't take away from the world at all, which I think some of the later fast travels did take away from the world by doing that. So, no, it's a good time. Everybody should come and join us. Follow us on there and come chat while I'm getting lost. Make fun of me for getting lost. I don't mind.
He doesn't. He really enjoys being made fun of. It's actually like lifeblood to him.
No, it's all in good fun. It's good conversation, and it's a game you don't have to play through again because I'll do it and you can watch. It's fine.
Would you say that they should would you say that they should start from the beginning, or is there like a select episode that they should start with? Is this a situation where less is more, Morrowind?
Morrowind is my pun that I named the title of each stream.
I
So,
know, saw that. It's glorious.
but yes, if you want to start at episode 1 and just catch up and grow with the character, that's totally fine. But you won't be lost just jumping in
Gotcha.
because we haven't done any of the main story or anything. So we're just doing all of the side quests first.
I get that.
So
That's the
yeah,
way to
feel
go.
free.
That's
Feel
how I
free,
was.
and I encourage you guys to join us.
Yeah. Fiction, or excuse me, at fictionology.twitch TV. Let's try that again at Twitch TV/fictionology.
That's right. Twitch.tv/fictionology.
Is that what I said? Is that
You
right?
said Twitch TV slash.
All right.
You forgot the dot, but it's okay.
That's fine. It's whatever. They've gone to 7 different addresses. There's no telling if I got it right the first time anyway. Whatever.
Well, they went to their streaming app to find Bram Stoker's
Bram Stoker's Les Vampire.
Uh,
That's funny. Well, yeah, you're definitely committed to the Morrowind walkthrough, and I think by the time you're done, you'll be 70, if I'm not correct. If
Oh my
my
gosh, yeah.
calculations correct.
Well, I'm 12 hours in, I think, total. Or no, maybe 10 if that last one was the 5th episode. Maybe 10 hours in total, give or take. And I only finished one guild and started a couple of missions or quests for another guild. So
Gotcha.
we've still got another 60 or 70 hours to go minimum. So,
well, let's see. The other thing, other than Bram Stoker's track lasagna, that I've been kind of binging here lately is a classic WB/CW TV show from the early 2000s into I think the very beginning of the mid 2000s, and that is Smallville.
yeah. I'm glad you left out the cult part of that because that has a very different meaning and ties to that show.
That's very true. Yeah, it is certainly aspects of it became a cult following. That's for sure in a very literal sense. Yeah, Smallville. I was never as devout a Smallville fan as I was like Buffy, Angel, Charmed, Mutant X, and a lot of the other cheesy early 2000 science fiction / fantasy shows. But Smallville's pretty good. It's not it's not Game of Thrones. It's not Breaking Bad. It's not The West Wing. This is not a masterpiece of storytelling, but it's a reliably good, reliably entertaining show. As the title suggests, for those of you who are big into DC lore, it's basically the adventures of a young Superman. It's an adaptation of Clark Kent's adolescence and his journey into adulthood, played by Tom Welling. And it's got a pretty good cast. Kristen Kruk as Lana Lang, Erica Durance as Lois Lane, and Michael Rosenbaum as Lex Luthor. Probably the definitive live adaptation Lex Luthor, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely.
The Gene Hackman, of course, was great in the 70s. Christopher Reeve, Superman, but he was more comic relief than arch villain. The disgraced Kevin Spacey, did a great job as Lex Luthor in Superman Returns. Although, again, that performance, unfortunately, is tainted by, his real life troubles. I think they did a huge misstep casting-wise with Jesse Eisenberg from The Social Network as Lex Luthor. Yeah. They kind of made him as like an evil Mark Zuckerberg, and it just didn't work.
It's kind of the feeling I got from that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of odd.
He did not do a good job, in my opinion, conveying the menace of Lex Luthor. But Rosenbaum in Smallville, he runs the gamut. He makes Lex likable, well-intentioned, but he also conveys the menace and the complexity, and as time goes on, those aspects of him really take over.
Right, and you start to see him slip into the
repeatedly. He stumbles a lot. Throughout the show, it's not like it's not a single thing that has him tripping over the side. He's constantly struggling to catch his footing, if that makes any sense. And he does a good job, and then eventually just he slips too far. And but the show is is really bingeable because it's not or it is serialized. It's not, each episode's kind of self-contained. You know what I mean? And there's
Right.
usually like a monster of the week or drama of the week. And
Which is fine, I think, but an overarching story is in the background, right?
oh, 100%.
So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say I would describe at least the first half or first two-thirds of Smallville as the relationship between Clark and Lex. I mean, they're good they become very good friends in this version, and then you see them slowly drift apart. And then of course there's Clark trying to figure out his origins, because he obviously knows he's not human, but he doesn't know that he's from Krypton and what that means. And it also shows his arsenal of powers start to develop as time goes on, like the heat vision and X-ray vision and all that stuff, and the flight. And like I said, it's certainly not. I wouldn't say it's Emmy worthy, but it's a consistently entertaining show, and there again, kind of nostalgia factor. Um, but it's also interesting in terms of taste, because in many ways Superman is a bit despite his popularity. I mean, he's probably the most iconic superhero of all time. I think it's fair to say. I think even more so than Batman and
yeah,
Spider-Man.
I would think so. Yeah.
But he is not as popular with newer audiences, because he's kind of seen as the infallible Boy Scout.
Right.
And
Right.
Smallville, I'm not going to sit here and say Smallville plays up like a morally ambiguous angle with Clark. Clark is generally a well-intentioned, nice guy. Now, he does make mistakes. He does, have a temper and stuff like that. But I mean, as far as people go, Clark Kent in general, and Clark Kent in Smallville's pretty damn good guy. If anybody has to be entrusted with godlike power, you'd probably want this dude to do it. I as you and I talked, being his adopted parents, Jonathan and Martha Kent. I mean, how the hell would you ground this kid? I'd be terrified. I really would. I'd live in existential terror all the
What are
time.
you gonna do about it?
Yeah. Hey, Dad, I'm going out to this party. No, you're not.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I am. Oh, okay. Well, have a good time. Like, what are you
Yes.
gonna do? Don't make me say, please don't go again. You know, uh, there was actually a horror movie that came out a couple of years ago called Brightburn, which was basically that conceit. Like, it was very similar to, Superman's origin story. And the conceit was, what happens if, Superman went dark, or Superman was a sociopath, when you were the parents trying to rein him in. That movie did not give an optimistic answer, so I think they're very blessed that Clark Kent is a well-intentioned, long-suffering hero. But it's been good to binge.
Yeah, it's a good show. You know what? It's one of those shows I think is better now because we often get a lot of really over the top dramatic shows nowadays, and it's good to
Yes.
step back into like the early 2000s and everything, and see the cheesy, you know, serialized shows. Um,
Yeah, I think that, again, I, I think that too often contemporary storytellers rely on cynicism and grim darkness to tell stories, and
mhm.
obviously for various reasons, a lot of the effects and the techniques and the standards, I think, in many ways are higher, right? Like, we
Sure,
expect a
sure.
lot more from our television and our movies in terms of like internal consistency and costume design, set design, special effects, all that. So we expect certain intangibles to be at a higher level. Um, but it's nice occasionally to kind of go back to, like you said, that early 2000s optimism, where they did flirt with moral ambiguity, I think more than they did in the 90s even. Um, but it was still kind of couched in this popcorn, feel good, style of fiction. And then HBO was starting to break into, The Sopranos and The Wire and stuff like that, and about the same time. So they were starting to get more into the dramatic, um, heavy storytelling that would give way to Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones, and stuff like that. But it's good to have, I think, a range, a variety
Oh,
of
sure.
of food,
Absolutely.
soul food in this case. And in this case, I think Smallville's it's very light comfort food in
Yeah.
terms of TV fiction.
Yeah, I recommend people watch it. check it out. Even if
Also,
you're
if
not a fan, I think.
yeah, yeah, and I will say too, you know, if this matters to you, even though it's a early 2000s show, this is probably like the most powerful iteration of like live adaptation of Clark Kent. And you gotta remember, you gotta compensate for the fact that it was an early 2000s TV budget. But if you're one of those nerds, as I once was and still am to some extent, who like is really impressed by how badass these superpowers and superheroes are, um, Clark Kent in Smallville is probably the toughest live version of Superman. So food for thought.
Well, there you go. There you go. Check it out. No, it's good. A lot of I like the show. I like almost all the actors. Obviously, there was some controversy around a couple,
Yeah.
um, and take that as you will, I guess. But the show itself is still pretty good.
Hmm.
And I'm not a DC fan, so but
Yeah,
I still like it.
nor I think Marvel eats their lunch
Hmm.
pretty much every respect.
All right. Well, I think I only have really one more thing that I need to talk about here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Um, I haven't been reading much or anything, so this is another video game. But lately, another nostalgic thing, I found myself kind of switching around games, playing through a few things, trying to get a feel for a couple of things, and something really jumped into my head. And lately, for at least the past almost month now, I've been playing almost every day an old MMO RPG called Anarchy Online. And for those of you not familiar with Anarchy Online, it is the first, I believe it's the first sci-fi MMO um, to hit the market, and it came out in the early 2000s, and had a really bad launch, but has kind of stuck around. It was produced and made by Funcom, who also made the Secret World, as well as Age of Conan, and Conan Exiles is their newest, or it's the survival game that people play nowadays. So basically, the MMO is sort of a sci-fi EverQuest, honestly, in a lot of ways. It's got a lot of old clunky, mechanics. You have a limited number of points to spend per level up, and if you mess up, it can be a problem, later on. And you may not know. You may not know your character. It almost requires you to have 15 tabs open, reading guides that other people have done, because it's almost hard. It's almost harder to just go through and do it yourself. It's to figure it out. Um, and I don't know. It just has that really nice old school charm with a sci-fi veneer on top, right? And the sci-fi world they put it in is just absolutely excellent. And I wish they would expand on it, make a new one or something like that, or even a single player game in the same universe, because they just have so much lore and galactic potential. And it takes place in the year like 20,000 something. So it's huge, distant future, right? So way in the distant future.
Do you think it might be, I don't know, do you think it might merit eventually or capture enough interest for you to do kind of a more extended look at it, like a
Maybe,
series or
but
anything?
this is more like a personal dinner, right? Um, if I show it to people, and I if I show it to people, I'll point out everything that's clunky and flawed about it, but it also makes me like it more. And I always have to set that expectation for, even if I ask someone to come play it with me, right? I have to set that expectation because it is clunky. The game's gonna crash 3 times a day. You're gonna have to set up your UI every time you make a new character, unless you copy and paste some files that are deep within the depths of your, operating system.
Hmm.
Um, the map in the game is made by a player, basically, because the original maps were very plain and bare. There are programs you can use in the game that might break terms of service for other companies, but don't necessarily for this particular game, right? So there's a lot about it that uh, I would like to cover, and it actually has a very dedicated community still. Probably only a couple of thousand players total, but pretty dedicated. and they'll help people do anything they need to do, help them get them set up. And there's a couple of organizations still around doing PvP and stuff. So it's just a really, really fun game, really fun MMO that just never exploded to the heights of like a World of Warcraft or anything. And
Huh.
would love to have a sequel or something, but I just don't see Funcom ever revisiting it, especially being, I think they were just recently either purchased or Tencent bought a large share or something. I could be wrong. I'll add that in if I see it.
I actually have their wiki page up, and you are correct. Back in January 2020, um, that was
Yeah,
10 cents intent.
yeah. I just don't see it happening. But it's one of those games that has a lot of appeal for people who love sci-fi and mix of sci-fi and magic and you know, things like that. But the way you play the game is very much like a traditional MMO. It's on one planet, right? It takes place on one planet and some floating platforms on the planet, and you have guns, but because it's so old, it's basically you're standing there with an attack timer and a you know, and it just shoots, right? Sort of like the old like KOTOR and stuff. You're not aiming and shooting or anything. You just press that you're gonna shoot, and then it'll shoot during a time period,
Hmm.
stuff like that. So it's really old, but it's still a really really fun game. Still really in depth. Requires you to do a lot of different things. Has a huge amount of customization. Um, it won't make you optimal if you customize, but you can customize literally any way you want. You can be basically any class and equip any weapon as long as you can get the points to do so into that weapon. And there are a bunch of different classes that go across a variety of just different what you would expect in a sci-fi and some things that you may not expect in sci-fi games. Like you have a soldier who uses machine guns, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or energy machine guns as well. Assault rifles, I guess, is what they call it, or ranged energy. And you have something like an enforcer, who's the traditional tank character, who's just a big guy or small, depending on which race you select. And you equip melee weapons and you go beat the face in of things and make them attack you instead, right? But then you have something like a martial artist. You know, sci-fi games, you know, you don't often see someone who doesn't use weapons in a sci-fi universe, right?
Right.
uh, a pure martial artist who can heal but also deal a lot of DPS, you know, damage per second, and has a lot of martial arts abilities that they use that harken back to, like, you know, ancient Sol system, you know, Earth martial arts,
Yeah,
and
that is a bit anachronistic, in a lot of ways, because you
yeah,
would expect that the setting would make martial arts obsolete. Like, you can do all the roundhouse kicks in the world, but I'll vaporize you with my blaster pistol.
right, yeah, and you would certainly think that, but then there are others, like, you know, people who use submachine guns versus one class who's an adventurer. It's called adventurer. It has nothing sci-fi about it almost. It is it can use pistols or melee weapons, either one, and its specialty is that it transforms into animals.
Hmm.
Like, you could transform into a little rat-like creature, or you can transform into a big, like, two-headed cat or whatever, and it goes on from there. So I mean, it just,
As one does.
there's just so much customization, and the classes are all like very distinct and unique, and it's just got that touch on it that just always makes me nostalgic for it, no matter how long it's been since I play it. I usually play it in bursts of a few months at a time every 5 years, and so far that's been that's been the case. And I come back and I relearn it and I have a lot of fun with it. So it's one of those games that most people probably won't find it interesting today, but it's free to play. So you guys should check it out, even just to mess around with it or something. If you're into those old EverQuest style games, with the old school, like a lot of old school customization and stuff like that, really fun, really clunky. There's over 220 levels, 200 if you're free. Takes a long time to get there, unless you just bull rush your way there, which I don't recommend you do. And that's just basically what I've been doing for most of my free time while I wait for the next World of Warcraft patch. Basically,
Hmm. Well, anyone who has kind of an appetite or an interest in, I want to say vintage games, but what's not antiquated, but maybe we'll go with vintage. Maybe that's the best way to do it. Bardakins is definitely a demonstration that there is a lot of fun to be had in a lot of the MMOs that are now like
sure,
under the radar, or that have fallen out of favor, for more contemporary games. There are a lot of gameplay features, game mechanics that have been lost that
yeah.
newer generations of players may actually quite enjoy if given the opportunity. So, um, yeah, I definitely recommend it. Bardakins has a lot of fun with it, and it's entirely possible that eventually you may see some of the gameplay from him. So, um, well, I really don't have anything else. Like I said, real life has kind of been, or offline life, I guess I should say, has been just a bit more active lately than expected. In some ways, good. In some ways, bad. And our hope is to have these episodes more regularly. And then, if we decide to go back and revisit a specific topic that we mentioned in one of these episodes and kind of blow it up and um, discuss it at length, we're certainly willing to do that.
It's always a
Uh,
possibility. So,
for me, my next thing is to get the first chapter commentary of Star Wars Yoda Dark Rendezvous, my all-time favorite Star Wars book, probably my all-time favorite book, period, and have that out to you guys. And I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what 2021 has in store in terms of fiction. They're supposed to do the 4K updates for like The Witcher 3, and I think they were supposed to re-release the Mass Effect trilogy. I'm supposed to be piddling through Mass Effect Andromeda. Haven't touched it in probably a week. Um, the fact that I had to send my computer back as I was becoming like truly sucked into the game and absorbed into it, it interrupted the momentum, which is unfortunate. But I do intend to get back into it. Um, but yeah, that's really all I have. Bardikins, you have anything else?
nope, I am fresh out. Like I said, I haven't been doing much else other than those two things lately. So,
For one last time, do you want to throw up the date and time and location of your Morrowind stream?
yeah, and of course I'll put this in the video section of this when we upload it to YouTube. It'll be in the description box below. Twitch.tv/fictionology. That is Wednesdays from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern time.
All right. Well, hopefully you all will make the decision to join Bardikins for Morrowind. Remember, in this case, less is not Morrowind.
Okay. Okay. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah. All right. Whatever. All right. Well, everybody, we appreciate it again. We appreciate all the support from all 7 of you. Hopefully, we'll get to 8 at some point or another. We're welcome to any feedback, comments, criticisms, and it would mean a lot to us if you would like and subscribe on wherever you can find us: YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, MySpace. I'm kidding. We don't do that anymore. Remember when Google Plus was supposed to be a thing? It was going to be the, latest and greatest Facebook.
It was a thing shortly.
Yeah, I don't even know if it still exists anymore.
No,
But
I think
anyway,
they've wrapped that up.
they rolled it. Yeah, fair enough. All right. Well, that's all I've got, and I think that's all Bardikin's got. So, wish you all the best, and we'll see you on the next episode. And this is Gideon out.
See you on the next one.